Okay, factoring without recourse. So without recourse means that the buyer has assumed the risk of bad debt. When the buyer assumes the risk of bad debt, there's going to be some kind of protection that the buyer might make. So let's take a look at the data that we would pull out of a problem. So we're looking at problems that we see in multiple choice and maybe even a quick simulation type problem. So we pull out the data from the problem. So once we know that we're the calculation, the problem says commute the factoring journal entry for for this particular transaction, you start looking for the data. Remember, it's going to throw a lot of distractors. So it's going to have different amounts and different percentages and effective percentage rates and different things, market bank rates, market fair market value rates. So you need to know what you're looking for. How much did you transfer? How much of the accounts receivable did you transfer? We transferred 100,000 of AR to bank. Okay? So they come off the books and they go to the bank. And we look at the contract, and the contract drop down, and we look for the words with recourse. Somewhere in our data, we're looking for with or without recourse. How much is the bank going to remit to the company? They're going to remit 85% of those receivables, and they're going to retain 15%. Okay? So when he goes to the bank to get some money selling these receivables, he's going to get 85%. The bank's going to say, I'm retaining 15% because I have as the buyer, the bank has assumed risk of bad debt. And that's what that retainage do. Now we look for the details, and there is additional terms that we're looking for. How are they going to handle that fee and that 15%? Okay, so when bank collects, they remit the retainage. That's supposed to be an M. They remit the retainage less fee of 3%. Okay, of total factor. Okay, so they start subtracting their fee. We also know from the problem, they have given us the fair value of the 15%. Now this is an estimate of bad debts, and the fair value of that estimate of the retainage is equal to $11,000. The fair value is going to be less than the amount that they retain. So they retain 15% of 100,000, and that $15,000 that they're retaining is value is 11,000. So clearly it's less than. Yes? Okay. So that's our data that we get. So how much cash does the company get? Journal entry, cash, 85,000. Our next entry is loss on sale. Don't know what it is yet. I have a receivable from factor. Okay. And I have the accounts receivable. I know what that is, and that's 100,000. Okay. So the receivable from the factor is the fair value, 11,000. That's the retainage, and they're going to subtract the fee of 3% of the total amount. So that's 3% of 100,000. That's 3,000. Okay, so I have a receivable for 8,000 from the factor. The loss on sale is basically the difference. So we take our journal entry, debits have to equal credits. Okay, remember that this is just a parentheses here. Okay. So these are dollar amounts, and this is just a memo. Okay, we don't put that in our journal entry anywhere. That's how I got the 8,000. Okay, so the difference is 7,000. Okay, so when the bank collects and they collect from that retainage, that amount less the fee will go to the company. So the collections will appear on the bank statement at the retained amounts less the fees. Okay, so other possible terms, you could have the factor's fees is withheld from cash advance. Okay, so the bank says, well, my fee is 3,000, so why should I give it to you just to, take it back later on? So I want to subtract that from their right now. I want immediate. So I'm going to subtract my fee from the cash advance. Loss on sale is still the same. Receivable from factor, okay, is 11,000 because I've eliminated this 3,000. And then my accounts receivable that I sold, I take off the books. The bank will do the collections for it. So watch what the terms are. So you could have you have to pay the fee right away. You have to pay the fee out of the proceeds. You pay the fee out of the retainage amount at the end. You could have a number of different things. It's a matter of reading the factoring contract and seeing what the terms are for that particular transaction. So they have sold the accounts receivable to the bank without recourse. So when it's without recourse, we have to have some protection from those losses from bad debts. Okay, factoring. Okay, with recourse. Okay, same data here that we're going to use. Okay, so we have a transfer of 100,000 with recourse. Okay, bank remits 85%, retains 15%, and the fair value of the 15% equals 11,000. Same data that we pull out, only this time it's with recourse. My journal entry is cash. I receive 85,000. My loss on sale, let's see what that's going to be. Receivable from factor. I have a recourse liability. Note that it is a normal credit balance. Okay, recourse liabilities goes with recourse. With recourse, you're going to have a recourse liability, then you sell the AR. So we sold the AR for 100,000. We're going to credit that. The recourse liability is estimated. Okay, so we estimate the recourse liability to be 3,000. We have a receivable from the factor of 8,000. And when we put this together, my loss on sale is 10,000. I estimate that recourse liability. If all my retainage is collected, then my recourse liability goes down. If my estimated since it's estimated at 3,000, if my estimate is low and I do more, then I would have a gain on sale. And I would have posted the loss on sale at the time. And then if my recourse liability, if the estimate is over or under, I adjust the loss on sale as it's realized. Only if the gain is realized would I recognize it then. Okay, factoring with recourse. A couple of examples here. Okay, and factoring with recourse journal entries. So those are the journal entries, and the blueprint just asks for the required journal entries for this. So remember that when you're trading the receivables, you're either securing, assigning, or pledging, and it's the factoring with and without recourse that makes a difference. All right, this has been Professor Campbell. Thank you very much.